Maryland basketball just landed a 4-star commit.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Maryland basketball just added a 4-star prospect, and I'm going to talk about, I think it's a really big add in Aleks Alston. So literally as the span of like the last 20 minutes ago, when you guys are watching it, probably in the last 40 hour today, whatever the case is, whenever you guys get a chance to watch this episode, Maryland basketball just landed a really big commit. I think who's going to be excellent that I'll get into some of his game and why I think it's going to be good and why it's a big commit. And they get this kid, Aleks Alston, who was on the radar for a while. I think a lot of people thought we were actually going to end up landing him. A lot of people thought he would end up being a Terp. But I love this kid. I think he's going to be a really good player for Maryland basketball. And there's a lot of different things that I think this kid's got going on. And I think he fits into the roster. And there's a couple different ways to look at it. Maryland basketball has a pretty full roster now. I don't know how many more guys we're going to add to actually have the chance of playing. You never know what the situation is, but Aleks Alston does seem kind of like the last straw on things. But I do think this is a big commit for Maryland basketball. One, for the biggest reason always, if you're going to say someone's a big commit, they got to be pretty talented. They got to be a pretty talented basketball player. They got to help you win in different ways, and they have to be pretty good. You can't just say someone's a big commit when they're probably not going to help you win. Like maybe they can give you some leadership, but as a freshman coming in, you're going to want a guy that can help you win basketball games eventually. And that's exactly what Aleks Alston can do for us. I think it's a really interesting type of player. I do think he has a really high upside. I think he could contribute next year, year one. But to get into a little bit about him, because I know a lot of you guys actually don't know a lot about this kid. Like I was just doing some quick research before this episode to kind of see what the deal is with this kid, because I honestly didn't know a ton about him. But he's a Chicago kid. He's from Chicago. He went to Kenwood Academy. And yes, he is a 2025. So he's another freshman to add to Maryland basketball's 2025 class that honestly is shaped out to be pretty solid for a coach that had to come in late in Buzz Williams. I think he's done a really good job with the 2025 class. Coming in with a late class, not being able to have all the time in the world to be able to put together. I think he's done a pretty decent job of getting different players that we want on that Maryland roster. And in that 2025 class, of course, the big one is Darius Adams. Of course, that's the big one for the Terps. But overall, Maryland's done a really good job, and Buzz Williams has done a really good job with the 2025 class. And I think Aleks Alston comes in right behind Darius Adams as a 4-star rated prospect on most websites, ranked around that 100th ranking range. So he's about the 90s to 100, depending on what website you look at. But he is rated as a 4-star on most different websites. On the 247 composite, he's ranked as a 4-star. He's also ranked as a 4-star on 3. They have him as a pretty high 4-star. So he's listed at 6'9". He's kind of listed as a power forward, and he did have a lot of other offers. So this isn't like some under the radar kid that we just pulled out. Like this kid had offers. When I look at on 3, it says he has had an offer from Illinois, had an offer from Tom Izzo, Michigan State, had an offer from Indiana, had an offer from Tennessee, Ohio State, Xavier, LSU, Georgia, Georgia Tech, California, like Iowa. Like he had some really solid offers, and the list goes on. And it makes sense. When you look at his body of work, when you look at his body type, and you look at what he can do at his body type, it makes a lot of sense how highly he's thought of, how many people actually looked as this kid as a guy that people would want. But the interesting part about it is Rivals actually has him ranked as a 68th ranked player in the class. So Rival has him pretty high up. But definitely this kid, Aleks Alston, has a lot of different offers at 6'9". And what I didn't realize is how much game this kid has. Like, I watched some, you can check it out, look him up and watch the highlight reel. It's pretty obvious this kid has some talent. This kid has a lot of talent, and he also is skilled. This isn't some kid coming in at 6'9" with a freakish athleticism and jumps out the gym or anything like that. Like, that's not what he is. He's a lanky type of athlete. He's a good athlete for sure. He's 6'9", but he is a little bit on the skinnier side. I think he's definitely on the skinnier side. Every website has something else. But I would guess at 6'9", he's probably about 210 pounds, I would say. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. By the time he gets at Maryland, they're going to bulk him up. But I think a big reason he can help is how skilled he is. When you watch him play, he's complete, man. At 6'9", he can do everything. He can handle the ball a little bit. That was clear when watching his film. He's not like a power forward that can't dribble. He's not a power forward that can't move. Like, he can move. He can dribble. He has skill in that type of way. And then he's also, I think what excites a lot of people the most, he can shoot the ball. At 6'9", he can shoot the ball. And I think that's really big in today's college basketball, to have a guy at the power forward position that can stretch out defenses a little bit. And that's exactly what Aleks Alston does. He's a guy that can shoot the ball a little bit, which is exciting too. And his jump shot looks clean. Like, it's a shot that's going to translate. It's not like some janky jump shot where we look at it and we're like, does that really work at the next level? Does that work in the college level? No, the shot looks clean. The shot looks good. And he's a guy that makes it happen. He's a guy that looks good shooting the ball, and I think that's really exciting for Aleks Alston and Buzz Williams, because Buzz Williams, when you have a guy at the 4 position with that kind of length at 6'9", but can also stretch the floor, I think that's a really exciting. And he also gets to the rim. He can also finish in different ways. When I was watching his film, I think that it might be a little bit harder as he gets to college because he's a little bit skinny now. As he adds on weight, he's going to get better at it. But he can finish around the rim. He can do some different things around the rim, which I think is really awesome for Aleks Alston. And then I think also is down low in the post. A lot of his stuff in high school, when you watch the film, his highlight, a lot of stuff came from down low in the post. He has clearly a post game down there. Like, this is a complete type of player. And I didn't really see any glaring weaknesses when I watched the film, except for the fact that he's pretty skinny. But a lot of basketball players are skinny. Like, you can name a million basketball players that are pretty skinny, that are lengthy. That's just the type of build you're going to get when guys get to be 6'8", 6'9". But I do think this kid can come in and play right away next year for Maryland basketball. And he fits right into the depth chart. He fits right in. I think when you look at him, he's similar to Elijah Sanders, who's one of our big transfers from Virginia. I think he's similar in the type of way where he stretches out the floor, but I think he's a more talented athlete than Elijah Sanders. I think Elijah Sanders will have the edge early on at that 4 position. And then obviously Pharrell Payne, who's arguably going to be our best player coming in at that 5. But I don't know why Aleks Alston can't compete for minutes right away. I don't know why, because we don't have a ton of bodies at that 4 or 5 position that I really think is elite. I really think are guys that can play. Like, there's just not a ton of them. So I think he slides into the rotation pretty early. To be honest, we're going to talk more about the Maryland depth chart and how the roster shapes up next. But I think he can play pretty early on, and I don't see why not, to be completely honest with you. And then I also think there's something to be said defensively. 6'9", long wingspan. He's going to be able to have a lot of upside defensively. His film didn't show a lot, so I don't know exactly what he looks like as a defender right now. But I think I see upside in the way he moves, how long his arms are, to be a pretty good shot blocker at 6'9" in length. Tough length to finish over. So I do think this is a high upside type of player. And I also think that he can play pretty early on because of how skilled he is. And that's really fun when you have a guy that feels like he's not nearly as good as he's going to be, but he also is already pretty freaking good. So I think this guy, Buzz Williams, can do a really good job developing him. Some websites have him listed as more of a 3, but I do think he's more of a 4 for Maryland, and I think he works there with his ability to stretch the floor and some of those different things. But I think in terms of his offensive upside, I think it's high, and I think his defensive upside is pretty high. And I think this is a really good I don't know how many more commits we'll get, but this is a really good commit for Buzz Williams. Obviously, we missed out on Sebastian Wilkins, and a lot of people are going to be upset about that. And a lot of people aren't going to love that happened. But at the end of the day, we got a kid here in Aleks Alston that might end up being similar to Sebastian Wilkins, might end up being a similar type of player as Sebastian Wilkins. Like, I wouldn't be surprised after watching both of their tapes. We'll see exactly, but I do think this kid has a really high floor, or a really high ceiling, I should say, not a really high floor. And I think if he develops right, he could definitely be a big part of this new Buzz Williams tradition at Maryland basketball. And I think this is a really solid 4-star commit, a guy that's not going to leave right away for the draft, a guy that's going to stick around. He's no Derek Queen, I'm not going to say that, but I just think he has the talent to develop into something really solid for Maryland basketball. And that leads me to my next point. Let's talk about Maryland basketball's roster. How is it shaping up? How does it look? What do we think about Maryland basketball's roster? We'll talk about that next. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery, and now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay in on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. I really like where Maryland basketball's roster is at, and I think it's starting to shape up and starting to take its kind of wave. And the way I look at it is, I think it's a really solid type of team, and I think Buzz Williams has put together a really solid roster, to be completely honest, with starting with 0 people. I think that this roster is complete and has a depth component to it that we didn't have last year. Last year's team wasn't deep enough. It wasn't deep enough to be able to beat Florida. It wasn't deep enough to beat Michigan State. And I think we ran out of gas at the end, where we depended so hard on our starting 5 and giving us production. And it worked. We made a Sweet 16. And in college basketball season, making a Sweet 16 is not easy to do. So I'm not going to sit here and be like we were bad last year. Obviously, everyone knows we were really good. But I think it's fair to say, against a Florida team that was better, deeper, had more guys that they could play, I don't necessarily think Florida's starting 5 was so much better than Maryland. Maybe had a bit of an edge. Maybe you can maybe argue Maryland's had a bit of an edge. But Florida, coming off the bench, they just had so much more production. They had a lot more guys that could do a lot of different things. And I just think Maryland basketball last year ran out of gas at the end, and in the Big Ten tournament as well. And then we ran out of gas too in March Madness, where we just depended on too many guys in our starting lineup in the Crab 5, Ronnie Rice, Gillespie, Derek Queen, Julian Reese, Celtic Miguel. Where this year, legitimately, like I tell you guys, I have no idea who's going to start. I have no idea what the rotation looks like. Last year before the season, I had a pretty good idea of what it was going to look like. This year, I have no idea. I have no idea who doesn't play. I have no idea who's going to lead the team in points. I have no idea who leads the team in assists. I have no idea who's our best guy off the bench. Like, I have zero clue with this Maryland team. And it's really cool, because it's kind of like, what exactly is going to happen with this Terp team? How's this Maryland team going to look? How's this Maryland team going to shape up. There's a lot of unknowns, and you don't usually get this. But for a roster that started at 0, I think there's a bunch of guys with really high upside, but I think there's also guys with pretty high floors as well, where you kind of get a mix of upside and also guys that have done it that aren't going to be maybe like 20 point per guys, 20 point per game type of guys, but we know they're going to be able to give us 12 points a game. And there's a couple guys on this team that might be able to give you 18 a game, or might be able to be third team all Big Ten type of guy. Like, that's how I feel about this roster. I think it's a complex roster, but it is deep, man. Depending on how some of these younger guys pan out, this roster is deep, man. And I think I like it a lot, and I think there's a lot of potential there. But and I'll keep saying this, I think it's similar to Michigan State's roster last year, where Tom Izzo said, great, we don't have 2-3 stars. I know guys started to develop into stars later on as the year went on. That freshman, I'm blanking on his name right now, ended up being a really good player for them. But besides that, and one other guard that was pretty good for them all season, but still, besides that, they played like 10 guys. And it was hard to beat Michigan State because they just had so many different players, so many different types of body types, so many different players you had to account for, and so many guys came in fresh and relaxed and ready to go with plenty of energy. And I think this team takes on a similar type of thing. Not going to have a star. Like, I don't know if I see a guy that's a complete star. I could be wrong about that too. I don't see a Jameer Young. I don't see a Derek Queen. I don't see a Anthony Cowan. I don't see a Melo Trimble. I don't see that. Pharrell Payne, I think, has a chance to be really good for us, but I don't know if he's that type of player. We'll see exactly. I think he's a lot of potential to be, especially how he played later on at Texas A&M. But I do think we have a bunch of good guards. Like, this might be the deepest team in the Big Ten next year. I really do see that happening. And with the freshmen coming in, with Darius Adams and with Aleks Austin, I think they fit in, man. I think they can play early. I just think Buzz Williams is going to play a ton of guys to start, because who on earth knows who's going to start? Because I certainly don't. And I think some of it comes down to I just don't know how good George Turkson is, the transfer from Texas A&M. That was a freshman last year that didn't play at all from Texas A&M, but still went and followed Buzz Williams. I have no idea how Andre Mills is. He was a top 100 recruit. He's a 4-star, same boat as George Turkson in terms of he was a 4-star out of high school. Like, I have no idea how good he's going to be. Same thing with Marquise Passmore, 4-star recruit. I just don't know how I guess you would say in the not this year, obviously not 2025, but in 2024, last year's college freshman, I have no idea how good he's going to end up being. None of those guys played last year, but all 4-star recruits coming from where they came from. So it's like there's a lot of high upside as well. And you get a Darius Adams, who's a 5-star prospect. You expect him to be pretty good off the bat. Aleks Alston, the guy I just talked about, 4-star commit. I think he's going to be really good. And then you talk about some of the experienced guards that we have on our roster. Miles Rice, experience coming from Indiana. I thought he had more. Potential than sometimes he showed at Indiana. I think he can get his own shot. I think he's a really interesting player. Isaiah Watts, I think, can be really solid next year at the guard spot for us. Solomon Washington was one of the best defenders last year in college basketball. Elijah Sanders plays that 4 spot, can stretch the floor, can score, gave Virginia 10 points a game. A bad Virginia team is one of their best players. Like, there's just so much going on this roster, and it's a lot of juiciness, if you will. You just don't know who's going to pan out. And I don't know if I've ever been more excited to see what can happen, because you know what's going to happen? Practice is going to be so competitive. When they run 5-on-5 or when they do different drills, whatever the case is, it's going to be so competitive, because I'm sure that all those players know they probably are looking at this roster similarly. I think everyone's probably looking at it as, I could start for this team. And I think people vary from I can start for the team to I might not play at all for this team. I do think that's kind of a thing for Maryland basketball, but I really like the roster. I really think that it's it's a diverse roster, and I want to see what happens with it. And I just think it's going to be so competitive to play. But I think Maryland will go 10 deep to start the year, maybe even more. I just think there's a lot of different bodies, but we'll see what ends up happening for the Terps. Let's talk about Maryland's safety room to end. Do we have a star in the safety room? Who's going to be good? Who's going to step up? Who's the young guys? We'll talk about that next. So I want to talk about Maryland football safety room, a room that we haven't talked about. We talked about the secondary a little bit because I think Maryland's done a really good job with safeties over the last couple of years. And I think there's potential for this Maryland safety room to actually end up looking pretty solid. So there's a couple different guys that I'm excited about from Maryland's safety room. I think there's a couple different guys that could end up being really solid players. I think that we've had really good players in the safety room over the last couple of years. Bo Braid last year made the Ravens 53-man roster. Dante Trader was 5th-round pick last year for the Dolphins. There's other guys that have been really solid safeties. Nick Cross a little bit ago for Maryland football. We know we've done a good job in the secondary. And I want to talk about guys I think on this Maryland roster that I think it could end up being really good safeties next year. I think next year, maybe the best player arguably on our team could be Jalen Husky. I don't think that's a crazy take. And obviously, we know we moved him from corner to safety last year. And it was a really good move, I think, by Mike Locksley. I think he looks better out there. And we know he was a really solid corner at Bowling Green, Jalen Husky was. But covering Big Ten receivers is different than covering guys that Bowling Green plays. It's a little different. I think his body type, I think the way he plays, and I'm sure he added a couple pounds probably this summer to be able to play safety. It's a little bit different. So I do think that the way he finished up, what was it? He played the last 5 or 6 games at safety last year, and I thought he looked really good at doing it. And whenever Mike Locksley gives you a tidbit about a guy looking really good, what Mike Locksley did about Jalen Husky, you take that tidbit and you say, I'm going to store that and wait for later to see if that ends up actually being true. And I think Husky is definitely a guy where you want to take that little thing, you want to take that tidbit, and you want to be like, oh, Mike Locksley says Jalen Husky's made a jump, and he's looked like some of our really good safeties over the past couple of years have looked like Dante, like Cross, like Bo Braid, like some of those guys that I talked about. And you're like, okay, he might end up being a really good player. And I mean it. He might be our best player next year, Jalen Husky, heading into the senior year. It's a big year for him in terms of making a jump to get on some NFL draft boards. But there's also other guys that are exciting, other guys that definitely can play for Maryland's secondary in their safety room. I think that there's a couple of young guys and there's a couple older guys that you want to see that can definitely play. So I think that Le'Veon Scruggs is a guy at the safety room that potentially could get the early nod. Played in all 12 games, started 4 last year, had 43 tackles, had a tackle for loss, 3 passes defended, and had an interception, and forced a fumble last year. 5th on the team in tackles. I think he's a really solid player. And as his redshirt freshman year, he appeared in 11 games. He's definitely a guy that I think can play, and definitely a guy that I think has some gives us a decent kind of room in that safety room and can kind of help us out. So I do think he's a guy there that potentially is a starter next to who's actually a starter on this team, and he's a starter next to Jalen Husky. I don't know why I was blanking on Jalen Husky's name for a second. And I also think Messiah Delhomme, the freshman 4-star, who was one of our top recruits, a blue chip type of prospect. He's a guy that could see some time early on, a guy that could play early for the Terps, that could end up being a really good player as well. I think Messiah Delhomme's really solid. I think he'll play for Maryland football, and I think he'll end up being pretty solid for Maryland football. But we'll see exactly what happens with the safety room. I do like Messiah Delhomme. I do like Le'Veon Scruggs. I do like Jalen Husky. I think the safety room is going to end up being pretty good for the Terps. I don't want to say it's elite, but I think it's going to be one of our solid parts of the defense that has a lot of question marks, but I do think the secondary is going to end up working out, I hope. That's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.